Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
How is everyone doing on this really nice day outside? So, thank you for coming. Thank you for those joining us online. So, today we're going to have our lecture done by our friend Patricky, and he's going to talk about young and old age. But before, as always, Isa is going to do our initial reading and the prayer for us. Good morning, everyone. So the reading, it's from the book Happy Life by developer Franco. Constantly search for your real identity, that is, discover the good in you. You note that you are neither better or worse than others. What counts is what you do. With this awareness, you will realize that you have no right to privilege, nor are you abandoned by the divinity. Everything that happens to you becomes a profitable lesson for your spiritual growth, since that is what you are on earth for. Gather all your accomplishments and turn them into lessons of wisdom, which will enrich you with blessings. So let's close our eyes, take a deep breath, connect with our spirituality that is here with us so that we can learn from this lesson. We can receive this energy and keep the love of God, the love of Jesus with us. So be it.
Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. Very nice to have everyone here on this very long weekend. I think it's the last that we will have this year. No? Okay.
Don't say that.
Don't say that? Okay. Sorry. Okay, but today we will talk a little bit about chapter 9 of the book Good News. And this book was psychographed by Chico Xavier and brought to us by Humberto de Campos. And before starting the lecture, I would just give an introduction of who was Humberto de Campos, because I think for us Brazilians, it is pretty straightforward, but perhaps not for everyone, right? So Humberto de Campos Veras was born in 1886 in Maranhão, in Brazil, and he died in 1934, December 5th, in Rio de Janeiro. And he was a writer, a politician, and a journalist. And he published many and many books and many contents when he was incarnated. But for us, or for spiritists, he has another importance because after his death, he, through Chico, brought many other books for us, right? So one of the books that he brought, and it's pretty famous, is Brazil, Heart of the World, Homeland of the Gospel. And this book was published in 1938. So as we can see, 4 years later of his passing, so it was pretty fast for him to come and bring some content for us. And one interesting fact about Humberto de Campos is that once his books started being published, his family, or mainly his wife with the rest of the family, they sued Chico Xavier and the Brazilian Federation for the rights of everything that was being published, because they understood that if it was under his name, they would also have the rights of receiving anything that would be published with his name. And the judge at that time understood that the right of us here finished with our death. Anything that was published after that was the right of the spirit, or for who was doing the work, right? And one of the reasons that this judge decided that, and at that time as well, was because they were having the discussion if we could or not use what the spirits were bringing to us on the court as well, because at the time we were having some letters that were bringing to the court. But even with Chico and the Federation, winning this lawsuit, Humberto de Campos understood that perhaps he should not use his name anymore. So he started writing or signing as Brother X. So anything that you can find written by Humberto de Campos or Brother X, it's mainly the same person. And some of the things that Humberto de Campos brings to us on the spiritual side is spiritual chronics, observations from the spiritual side, books about morality, and a little bit about the gospel as well, right? And the book Good News, or Boa Nova in Portuguese, is exactly that. It is a book that brings stories about the gospel. And on this book, we have 30 stories about Jesus and the apostles, stories that we knew from the Gospels, right? But stories that he could gather a little bit more information on the spiritual archives. So, and one good interesting fact of that book is that it doesn't follow an order. So you can open the book and read any chapter that you want, that it will be that story at that moment for you at that time. So if you're willing to have that on the corner on your table, on your bed, it's a nice book to have and to read one or two chapters whenever you feel so. And before diving a little bit in on today's chapter, as we know, Jesus had 12 apostles. And for some of them, we do have a lot of information. So Simon that later became Peter, or James, or Matthew, or John. But there are other apostles that we do not have tons of information. And the main character of the story of today is one of them. It's Simon the Zealot. And he became known as Simon the Zealot later. And he mainly the Zealot means, or it was a spiritual religious group at that time, connected to the Jews. So all of them, they were Jews. And they had a very strong belief on God, of course, but they were more resistance, or they created a resistance against the Roman Empire. So this resistance that they created, they understood that they could do that resistance even with the use of violence or carrying weapons. So they were in constant fights with the Romans. And in one of that fights was when they destroyed the Temple of Jerusalem, and that happened in the year 70 after Christ. But that's just adds up on the story, just for contextualizing who was Simon, that we will talk a lot about now. So as we know, the 12 disciples, they were a very diverse group on the personal abilities, right? And one thing for us to remember is that on the first place, they were humans like us. So they had their struggles, they had their beliefs, they had the difficulties that they had through their lives as well, right? So it was not uncommon for them, or to see them discussing a bit about their lives and about the beliefs or the planning that they were doing for the future. And beyond the young disciples, they believed that they would be able to travel all around the world, and mainly preaching the gospel's teachings. And with this travel and all this, by taking these words, they thought they would be able to change the peoples and the nations, and everyone would live with more love, right? And they consider themselves the only ones that could do that job, mainly because they were young. And John, James, and Judas Thaddeus, they were the more impassioned ones regarding that. So they were just waiting for Jesus to let them go and spread the word, spread the gospel. And they were usually comparing themselves with Simon, there's a lot, with Peter, and with Matthew. And mainly the comparisons that they did were because they were older and they understood that they didn't have, first, the courage, second, the strength to go and travel and do all the spreading of the word. So while Simon Zealot was hearing of that, he kind of felt humiliated. And he started to question himself if he had the strength and the power to go out and do the work that needed to be done by the gospel, or to take the gospel and to take Jesus' words, right? And by feeling so, he decided on the next day to go and talk to Jesus about that, about his feelings and everything that was happening. And when he met Jesus, of course, he told everything that happened and everything that he was feeling. And Jesus was not surprised by that. He was already waiting for him. And Jesus asked him two questions just for the beginning. And the first question was if we could know our Father's age. And of course, just to make a context here, our Father is God, right? And the second question was who was the oldest one between all of them that were incarnated at the time, right? And he continued comparing time to life and telling that life was not more than a great tree where the childhood were the branches and the youth were the fragrant flowers and the old ages the fruit of the experience. So mainly what Jesus was trying to say is that the branches were the hope, right? Where the kids will come and give hope for the next generation. The flowers, they are the promise because they are not kids anymore. They learned what we teach them, but they are still not there yet. They need some work. They have some work to do so they can be perhaps the promise for the future. And the old ages are the realization. So everything that we have done, right? And not that the realization is completely done, because of course we can do other things, but most of our work is done at that one point, right? And Jesus always added that the life of the Spirit is eternal and always blooms, while our human life here ends in this brief on the context of eternal living, right? And Simon asks one question to Jesus, and he asks if old age is the goal for the Spirit. And Jesus tells Simon that not the old ages of suffering and bitterness that we know here on earth, but the old ages of wisdom and love, and upon all the experiences that we build during our lifetime. And I think here is also important for us to recall the tree, right? And understand that the perfect fruit is fresh. It depends on the freshness of the branches. If the branches are not fresh, we will not have a good fruit. So all the process is important for us. And Simon shared with Jesus that he was still feeling overwhelmed and thinking he was not able to complete the work. And then Jesus said to Simon, and I will read that part because I could not memorize that. He said so, Simon, do you think the youth of tomorrow can accomplish anything without the work of those that are growing old now? Could a tree live without the roots, or a soul without God? Remember your part of the effort and do not worry about the work that belongs only to God. Above all, do not forget that our task to the perfect dignity of our soul must be non-transferable. John will also grow old, and the white hairs on his brow will tell deep experiences. Do not be hurt by the speeches of the young on earth. The flower in the world may be the beginning of the fruit, but it can also adorn the processions of illusions. When surrounded by the buzz of the youth, love the young who show the work and reflection. However, do not fail to smile equally to the frivolous and fickle. They are children who need care, bees that do not yet know how to make honey. Forgive their aimless enthusiasms, just as one should forget the impulses of the boy in the unconsciousness of the earthly days of life. Enlighten them, Simon, and do not think that another man could carry out the whole divine work, the effort that belongs to you. Go and be of good courage. An old man without hope in God is a sad brother of the night, but I come to bring the world the brightness of the perpetual day. And then just making a pause here on the story, mainly what Jesus was trying to show Simon is that our age here on earth doesn't matter, right? Our age as a spirit doesn't matter as well. What matters is the work that we need to do to get better, and the work that God needs to do is with God. We should not worry about that, or the work that others need to do to get themselves better, right? And mainly the work that we need to do is our moral and intellectual perfection. And funny enough, we have discussed that many and many times here, they do not walk together. We will have incarnations where we will grow more morally, and other incarnations that we will grow more intellectually. Of course, there are incarnations that we can grow together, but it's okay working in one and this and another one and the other, right? And one thing that is pretty important for us to remember is that we will always have access to our moral side. We will remember that. We are here to be tested on everything that we already learned and to improve what we do not know or what we need to learn. On the intellectual side, otherwise, it's not every time that we will remember everything that we know from the other incarnations. Because sometimes there are things that first we don't need to remember, or if we remember, it will disturb the other side that we need to improve. And I think one good example for the moral side could be, let's say someone is incarnated or just born in a place where hitting is normal, and he already learned that lesson. He will understand that that is wrong, and perhaps he will help that place to grow and understand that that is wrong. He can be the beginning of that change, right? Or on the other side, we can see children that are born and with 2 or 3 years of age, they can remember how to play the piano or understand a lot of physics. Another day I saw a video of a boy, I think he was 5 years old, explaining the function of the hearts with everything, like all the valves and how the heart works. So that's a little bit of what we need to do here ourselves. But continuing and going back to our story, the conversation between Jesus and Simon finished at that point. And Simon went back where the apostles were staying, and it was mainly on a lake shore. And when he arrived, James, was talking to the other apostles. And while he was talking to the other apostles, when he saw Simon, he made a comment regarding the age, not trying to humiliate Simon, but kind of saying, hey, he is older and that's why he cannot do that, right? And Simon at that point was not concerned anymore. He didn't get bothered. But he waited until James was alone. And then he called James on the corner and said, "Hey, you know what? Do you think that the Spirit has an age? And if that's so, do you think that God is not the oldest one of all the creation? And among us, who presumes to be equal to God?" And he continued saying exactly what Jesus told him, that a young man would not be able to fulfill everything that he needs to do without the lessons that he learned with the father or with his parents. So that's the same with us. We should not, or be concerned about our age here on earth. We should be more concerned about what we are doing now and everything that we can do to improve ourselves. And James got exactly what Simon was trying to say. So they embraced each other and they went to a place where Jesus was giving a speech later. And while Jesus was giving the speech, Simon noticed two children playing on the water. And he noticed that the children were going into the water and every time going more to the deep and more to the deep. And the mother was paying attention on Jesus, on what Jesus was saying. So Simon went there, he took the kids out, and he stayed with the kids. And by the end of the lecture, the mother came and thanked him, telling him that she was not paying attention, right? And on that same day at night, when Simon was already sleeping, he was dreaming with Jesus. And mainly what Jesus was saying to him is that he was very happy by the counsels that he gave to James, that he really understood exactly what he was trying to say. And as well for taking care of the kids. And mainly he did that because of the experience that he had and all the knowledge that he could gather at that moment. And Jesus left him with just one other phrase, that is that the truth is that being young or old in the world does not matter. Above all, one must belong to God, showing us again that our age here doesn't matter, that we should really focus on getting better and improving ourselves. And while I read that text for the first time, I was trying to get a little bit more information in other books that we could connect and try to bring a bit about that. And I found two books that kind of bring the same story. The one is Sun and the Soul, and I don't think there's a translation for that book. It's a book that was psychographed by Valdo Vieira and brought to us by the spirit of André Luiz. On chapter 19, mainly, we read that part as well. The practice of the good is not tied to a specific age, but to the commitment and discipline from the youth. Youth is the ideal phase to transform spiritual depths. Every day, the purgatory zone and the spirituality receive numerous young and elderly souls who leave the human body in the full bloom of the bodily energies. It is essential to balance joy and prudence, understanding that true responsibility before eternal life begins early with the service of Christ that leads to the true elevation of the soul. So again, in a very short message, it shows to us that our age here on earth does not matter, that we have spirits, young and old, that are, after passing, suffering because of the work that they didn't do here on earth, or because they didn't focus on all the evolution on the spiritual side. And there's another book that is The Way, the Truth, and the Life. And this book is translated. It was brought by Chico. It was psychographed by Chico and brought by Emmanuel. And on chapter 151, it talks about the childhood. And it talks about the childhood being mainly as the preparation for our future. And the old age is the arrival to the harbor, right? And it requires a lot of experienced sailors to sail on the ocean and to gather to the harbor at the end. But we will just get that experience by sailing, by going out and trying to learn, trying to improve ourselves, right? And while I was trying to connect with other books and finding a little bit of information on Kardec's books about the age and the spiritual side, or whatever you want to call that, funny enough is that we don't have anything that correlates directly and says, oh, age is that, right? We have other things that we can connect and talk a bit about the age. So on the spirits, on the spirits book, on chapter second, we have the purpose of incarnation, right? And the purpose of our incarnation is the perfection. So mainly what the spirits bring to us here is that we need to work in ourselves to get to perfection. And we will see later that we will not do that in one incarnation. We have many times to do that. And one thing that we always discuss here in our Wednesday studies is that first, we need to take advantage of all the opportunities that we have here to try to evolve ourselves. And one thing that Raquel always brings to us is that we should not add too much pressure on ourselves as well. At the point that if we are understanding and knowing ourselves and we understand what we need to change, that should be the first step for us to work on. So acknowledging what we need to do better is the start. We cannot expect that we will change from one day to the other and say, hey, now I'm Chico Xavier, right? I don't think nobody's waiting for that. So it is okay to take time. It's just that we cannot stop. On chapter 4, it talks about the plurality of the existence. And it talks about the reincarnation. And then question 166, the spirits bring to us that the main reason for our incarnation here is the trials of the existence. So we need to pass them. We need to come and do it. And in question 168, they tell us that there's no limit for incarnation. Like, it's not a bottom limit and there's no top limit. So we can have as many incarnations that we have. If it takes us 1,000 incarnations, good. If it take us 10,000, that's okay as well. Nobody is counting time. God just wants us to be perfect, and He will give us all the opportunities to get there. So on item 5th on the gospel, I didn't know the chapter, sorry, but it's question 197. What they tell us is that children can be more experienced than adults, or than young people. So if children can be more experienced than adults, it goes totally against the thing of the age that we were discussing, because now we have a 4-year-old that has more experience than a 90-year-old, right? So again, that goes directly to that, telling us that we should not give importance on that. And there's another question, that's question 383, where the spirits tells us that during childhood, it is easier for us to teach the children on the moral side. So they are easy, they will get it easier. So it is our responsibility as adults or as parents to teach them everything that we can teach them. So when they are on the young age or even as old adults, they can make the change that they need to do. Of course, they have their own free will. And even if we teach them and they decide to go in a different path, that's their problem, but we did our part. And the last part that can connect a bit to that on the gospel that I could find is question 766, that tells a little bit about the law of society. So it tells here that God gives us our mouth and our ears so we can speak and hear. And that's not just for fun, right? It's because we need to communicate to each other so we can exchange our experiences. We can learn from each other. We can learn from a kid as well as we can learn from a old person, right? And what they always, what they say here as well is that there's no one on the earth that possesses all the knowledge. So we need to be together and learn together, because that's the only way that we could evolve and could get to a better place and one day be perfect. So now shifting a bit to the gospel on chapter 7, where they say about the mission of an intelligent person on the earth. Connecting a bit what we were saying before is we should not be proud of what we know, because we do not know everything. Our knowledge here is pretty limited. And it's limited first because we don't know everything, and second because God will not allow us to know everything, because we have not the capacity of understanding everything. And the only way that we can get more knowledge and God can reveal more things to us is by improving our moral and our intelligence. Because He will not teach us to do one thing if our moral is too low, right? He will wait for us to evolve our moral, or for the society to have a balance of both, so He can open more doors for us. And one other thing is that we are responsible for the knowledge that we have and how we use this knowledge. So we need to use the knowledge wisely. Like Simon, when he saved the children, when Simon, when he saved the children, he knew what he was doing. He did it for a good, right? And on chapter 8, when Jesus said, "Let the children come to me," mainly what he was trying to say here is not it is written like the children, right? It is like everyone, let everyone that has the poor heart of a child come to me. So we need to learn how to have our poor hearts poor, so we can go to Jesus and be with Jesus. And we will just get there if we work on our moral side, in our moral evolution. And on chapter 17, on the chapter that is called Be Perfect, Jesus, or the spirits in Kardec, brought to us a bit about taking care of our body, right? That is also part of all the learnings that we need to have. We need to take care of our spiritual side, of our pure spirit, evolve ourselves, but we also need to take care of our body, because they are directly connected. If we do not take care of one, we will harm the other. So we are responsible of taking care of our body on the same way that we are responsible of taking care of our spiritual side. So just to summarize a bit, the spirits, they never mentioned anything regarding age. So we should not be concerned about our age here on earth. We should be concerned about the things that we know and the things that we understand that we can improve. We need to understand the importance of evolving morally and evolving intellectually. And that's the only way that we will get to a better place, or to follow the path of evolving. So again, we should not add value on the age that we are here. And one last reflection for that is that time is a human creation. It's not a God's creation. So if that is so, why should our age matter so much for us? And that's it. Any comments, questions, critics?
No, it's very good. And it is true what you brought in terms of the age not being a difference, right? Because in the end, speak of a child,
Sorry.
speak of a child will be morally and intellectually more involved than a spiritual an adult. But it's important here in society to have those, as a society, to have, that each phase of our life has its own responsibilities, right? Like you said, as a parent, you have the responsibility of guiding the young ones. Right? But it's important that the generations respect each other. But for that, the older generations need to teach the younger ones to respect, right? But they also need to respect the younger generations, right? Because usually what we have is, and it's normal for the generations to say, so you guys don't know anything, you're just too old, and and then famously 20, 30 years old lady becomes the famous, oh, my mom and my dad were right. That's typical. And that's,
Nobody here understands that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's normal, but at the same time, we have the older generations look and say the famous phrase like, "Oh, my time was much better. Oh, my time this didn't happen." Really, because then if you go back 30 generations, go back 300, 400 generations, and actually it's funny because I was reading a phrase from was like a famous philosopher from 600 years ago. I can't remember which one, and he was saying how this generation is lost, and this and that and that. And then when I looked like, oh, that's like from, like, you talk about someone from Socrates' time. So imagine if those people write, then instead of transitioning to a plan of regeneration, we transition to a plan of like a primitive plan. It's not. We are evolving, right? Because there's no regression. So we are evolving. The generations are better, but we want to make transformations, right? So I think the older generations need to learn to look to the young with care, with the responsibility, but also with the respect, to understand that we are there as well, right? Trying to learn, trying to understand, trying to discover. And then they bring new things. Because that's us coming back, went back to the spiritual plan. It's like, oh, I got it. Now I'm gonna come back. And we get new ideas, we absorb new knowledge there and come back, right? That's what happens. The generations come with the new scientists, new intellectual, new scientists, new ideas that really drive our intellectual growth, right? And so we need to learn the new generations do bring the new as well. We need with the new ideas, new everything. So to respect each generation has to respect each other.
I think what you bring is pretty important, because if we think we are on a planet, or I would say that every planet is like that we have a mix of spirits. We have spirits that are a little bit less evolved, spirits that are more evolved, right? And we have that through all the generations as well. So we need to learn with all the generations and everything that they need to teach to us, first, what to do and how to do it, and the second as well, why not to do, how not to do it, right? Because we have examples on all the sides. So yeah, that's a very good important point for us to look to all the generations, not just to the older, not just to the younger or to the middle ones, but to learn what they can bring to us, and perhaps having a little bit more of patience with all of the generations, so we can match and find a better path for our entire society.
Listening and respect.
Listening and respect. Yeah.
Haroldo Dutra said something on a lecture about the subject when he says that this idea that every young generation has to, as we see, and especially in Brazil, they have to break their head on the wall to learn. The same way they learn. He said that's not true. That's what the older generations are doing. For us to be able to look to the people who already went through what we might and say, yeah, that doesn't work, right? And that's where it's the work of the older generation to give them and say, listen, this path that you're going is not the right one. And it's still up to the young generation to say, yeah, but I want to go anyways. Okay, so you're going to learn the hard way, or learn, which is what the spirituality does with us all the time, right? So we don't not necessarily need to make the same mistakes to in the future say, oh yeah, you're right, but it's a choice. So that's why they're older here to guide. But like I said, because sometimes people that are younger, that it's a way more involved spirit that actually come to guide the older as well, right? So we need to see that other position in there as well. There is a question here from Leo saying, what are the reasons some people have the chance to pass through all age stages, baby, child, adult, elderly, and others don't?
I think it's mainly what we need to learn here, right? So there are people that they needed just to learn one part, or it was a very specific part, and they do it pretty fast, and they go because they did everything that they needed to do here. There are children that come as a test for the parents, and I don't like that word, but I will say it anyways. They sacrifice their incarnation, or they come just for that, right? They come to make the parents learn something that they need to go through. There are cases where people committed suicide and they needed that specific time frame to complete the incarnation that they were here before. So I don't think there is a straight answer to that. I think there are many things that can vary. But I would say that it's more what we need to learn and the path that we choose or that got imposed to us because we could not choose. So I would say something like that.
Yeah, yeah, everybody will get what they need.
Exactly.
Some ways, some spirits even it's created as a newborn pretty much, because they just need that the peer spirit needs that shock to start to clear their peer spirit so they can now come with a better spirit that's able to fulfill a longer life, right? But it's like you said, it's each one get what's needed. Yeah.
I was almost saying we will never know, but we will. When we go to the spiritual plane, we will.
And Leo has another question. How should we consider others with the different age groups than us?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
How should we consider others? But I think it's considered in terms of how should we treat others with different age groups than us. That's what I'm guessing.
I think we should treat everyone as we would like to be treated by the end of the day, right? Or on the path that you think that is fair with you and with others. I don't think we should treat anyone different than that.
The rule is the same, and Jesus gave to us, right? He didn't say regardless of the age or anything.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Just treat them, yeah. Anything else? No?
Thank you, Patrick. That was great. A lot to think about and reflect. and always being respectful towards others, independent of the age. So with that, thank you for those who join us online. We're going to get ready for the passes here. Hope you guys enjoy your long weekend if you're in Canada. Otherwise, happy Monday.